What's up? Welcome in. It's our special Wednesday edition of the Minnesota Football Party right here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I'm Sam Ekstrom. You'll meet the rest of the crew in just a second. I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On today's show, Sam Darnold trade talk. The tag window is open. A franchise tag is on the table. Could it be accompanied by a Sam Darnold trade? We'll talk about that and the possible return on the Vikings' former quarterback. Free agents. We're going to get into free agency in about 3 weeks. Which ones would you want to avoid? Plus, there's a new controversial Vikings mock. And which NFC North team could be facing regression? All that and more coming up on the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first watch or listen today, and check out our audio on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed. Let's meet our crew today. Let's go around the horn. Reggie
Wilson, sports director at Care 11, and I don't feel like the Vikings should use their franchise tag.
I'm Ron Johnson, former Gophers wide receiver, NFL wide receiver, Gophers Hall of Famer. And I have to talk about why a running back might be drafted, but I'm not sure that's the way we should go.
I'm Julia Daniels, sports reporter at Care 11. So Reggie and I are coworkers. Actually, Reggie's my boss, in case anyone was wondering. It was -8 degrees this morning, but we're going to still talk about football. And we're going to talk about, obviously, the mock draft, but also what free agent we are not so excited about signing.
And that's all coming up in the next 45 minutes or so right here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Once again, I'm Sam Ekstrom. Now, today is day 2 of Tag Watch with Sam Darnold. The tag window opened yesterday. He is eligible to be franchise tagged. Now, there was a report after, Ron, we did our whole show about talking about franchise tagging Byron Murphy. That might make some sense. There was a report that the Vikings have pushed back the void date on Byron Murphy, which basically eliminates him from the franchise tag. They've eliminated the franchise tag possibility on Aaron Jones as well. They've kept the franchise tag hope alive, though, with Sam Darnold. Here's my question for today. If you traded Sam Darnold, if you tagged him and traded him, which a lot of people suspect could happen, what would you want back? What is Sam Darnold worth if you dealt him to, say, Vegas, and he went to Las Vegas? And what do you want back from Tom Brady and Mark Davis and the Las Vegas Raiders? Ron, in Mexico, what do you think?
Sorry. So the scenario is tag and trade Sam Darnold. So
the
only reason, the only reason I don't know if you get a lot back for that is just because everybody knows if that happens, the Vikings are kind of in the weak position in this. Like, they don't have a strong position. So teams are going to offer them whatever. What I would want back personally, the way Sam Darnold played, I'm not sure first round pick. So he was a 3rd pick overall, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think if I'm really pushing the envelope, I'm going to ask for 2 seconds and a 3rd for Sam Darnold. I don't know if you can get that. I don't know if somebody's willing to give you that, but at least 2 second-round picks. The reason is a first-round pick, a lot of times, if they don't work out, it's a bust. In that second round, you tend to find a lot of gems. You tend to find Dalvin Cooks, Antoine Winfield Jr.'s, T. Higgins. So there's a lot of diamonds in that second round that you can get. And so that's where I would go. I would say, you know what, look, ask it for a first. Somebody might give us 1 first, but I don't think they will. I would push for more draft capital so that you can trade and try to get more capital in for 2025. So I don't know how many picks you can get out of Sam. I don't know if it's multiple seconds, multiple fourths. Because you could turn 2 fourths into a 3rd. I don't know what the answer is, but I would have to give me at least 2 second-round picks for Sam Darnold.
I think that would be helpful if you had a couple second-round picks in your draft. It might not both be this year, but that would be one path to making this draft a whole lot more interesting. Julia, you think that's a fair price for Sammy Darnold?
Yeah, I thought Ron was saying something. Yeah, I absolutely. That's kind of the route that I was going to go too, because I don't know. It just seems. It seems like something that my feeling is it's not likely to happen this way, but I do think, I would say 2 second rounds and 2 fourth rounds, which like Ron was saying could turn into obviously 1 third round pick or something. But I don't think they're going to get like because I was looking up what people were saying online, hypotheticals and what they could get. I don't think they're going to get like somebody's any starter from a team in that case too, because if he's got a franchise tag, what is that, like $40 million or something like that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say they would get picks, if anything, out of a trade with Sam Darnold, which I mean the Vikings could use, right? But I think that the only way that they really do this route would be if they don't think that JJ McCarthy's rehab is going well, or as well as they had hoped, is kind of the only way that I see them really taking this route, where they could have the option, obviously, to keep him around, and then they can weigh their options a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, we don't see this happen very often anyways, but if the hypothetical situation did happen, I would for sure say they could get 2 second round picks for Sam Darnold, for sure, especially after the season that he had. And then I'm going to go 2 fourth round picks along with that.
Decent haul. I think people would be happy with that, Reggie. I mean, I looked into this just for historical precedent, and there really is none. I mean, 27-year-old quarterbacks have not been tagged and traded before. Most of the time, the tag and trade, it's usually a disgruntled pass rusher. It's like Yannick Ngakoue, Jadeveon Clowney, Frank Clark. There's not really a precedent for a quarterback like this to get tagged and traded. So what do you think is a fair compensation?
So I would say to pay off the tease at the start of the show, I just don't feel like that's a scenario that the Vikings should do. I just think it's way too risky, and you're betting on a lot, considering that the last memory of teams around the league for Sam Darnold were his last 2 games. And I know he played well throughout most of the season, but that Lions game and that Rams game was like all the tape that you needed to see. And maybe you're an optimistic person and you're like, you know what? It was one to grow on. It was a season to build on. And you're like, it didn't end like maybe you wanted it to, but we think if we continue to coach him up in a good way, that he can go further, because this was the best that he's looked in his career so far. So only up from here. And if you're optimistic like that, then you're like, okay, yeah, maybe we can do something. But with that tag being north of 41 million, I just don't know that you risk it like that just to, especially, 27-year-old quarterback. And that's now hoping that a team like the Raiders see that he's still a relatively young quarterback at 27 years old, and they want to build around him, as opposed to maybe taking a 1 year or 2 year, 3 year flyer on him and seeing what happens that first year. And so I think, there's no precedence for it, but I think if you were to do something like that, you got to get back a 1 at least. I think you get back a 1, especially being that, it's, when you think about the franchise, the quote unquote automatic return is like 2 1s. But obviously you're not going to get that for Sam Darnold. But I think if you were to do that scenario, I don't think you do it and you say, oh yeah, give me 2 2s. Like, no, you should probably get a 1 in return for that, especially considering him being coming off a career best year, 4,300 plus yards, 35 touchdowns, best completion percentage of his career. And again, still being a relatively young quarterback, going into, if not already in his prime. I think you get a 1 in return, and that's the going rate. But with all that said, I don't know that a team wants to do that unless they really are sold that he's like a franchise quarterback. And I don't know that he did enough in just 1 season of work to show an interested team a la the Raiders and, Chip Kelly with that offense and Pete Carroll as head coach, former SC guy, just like Darnold's a former SC guy. I don't know that they want to make that type of investment. I think he would get signed as more so like another like bridge, like stopgap type quarterback. See if it works. If it does, then maybe you kick the can down the road. Maybe you draft a developmental guy after, or if it doesn't work, you only made like a 1-year commitment, just like the Vikings did last year. And I also think that it makes sense if they do let Darnold walk. Maybe you bring Daniel Jones in on a 1-year, $10 to $12 million deal to compete with McCarthy just in case, and maybe kind of redo the whole formula from last year.
I can't get the Raiders out of my head. I just think that they've got the money. They've got the desperation. They're also just kind of a little bit impulsive as a franchise. Mark Davis is that way. Like, I think that they would make a decision like this. They've also got the X factor, Tom Brady, who's going to have a lot of say in the quarterback decision because he's Tom Brady. All it will take is for Tom Brady to throw his weight behind that move for them to maybe pull the trigger.
Yeah, but would he though? Tom Brady's like a head hater in chief. Like, all my people who were watching all the games that Brady did this year with Kevin Burkhardt just talked about how Brady just like ragged on, quarterbacks if they weren't as good as him or if they didn't display the type of, knowledge or game that he did. He was just like a hater. And he watched those games. He understands what championship football looks like. I just wonder if he decides that he wants to throw his weight behind a Sam Darnold as opposed to, a newer quarterback that they could mold.
Yeah, I get that it's a gamble. Like, if you make a big swing on Sam Darnold and screw it up, you look really bad. If you give him the Kirk Cousins deal and it goes the way that Kirk Cousins deal went, you'll look really, really bad. And I know that Tom Brady's trying to make that impression. But I just keep looking at what the Raiders have to offer. They've got an extra third-round pick this year. I think you could also look at their roster, too. I think if you dealt Sam Darnold to the Raiders, I think they might give you someone like Jack Jones, who was a really good cornerback for New England, not as good in Las Vegas, expiring contract. That would be like a toss-in. You get some cornerback depth, get the third-round pick this year, and get a high draft pick next year, day 2 pick next year. I think Vikings fans will be pretty happy with that as well. They just need one team to give them something in this deal to make it worth it, right? Even if it's a relatively small return, you would still get something for Sam Darnold. Doesn't have to be a bounty. You just want to make that process worth your while. You developed him, you turned him into something. You don't want him to walk for nothing. I think the Vikings would probably accept, kind of whatever package is offered to them as long as they get that money off their books. Coming up on the Minnesota Football Party, we'll see if Julia's video returns. We'll also look into free agent pitfalls the Vikings should avoid. That's next on our Wednesday show. Don't go anywhere. We are brought to you today by TurboTax. Yes, this is a message from our great sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. And now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress, so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. This is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. All right, welcome back. Wednesday edition, Minnesota Football Party. Ron in Mexico. Ron's disappeared, but Julia's back, so that's good. Julia Daniels, we'll go to you first on this. So free agency starts in 3 weeks. Vikings have a ton of in-house free agents, bunch of guys that are going to hit the market.
Yep.
I'm curious if there's anyone that you would want to avoid bringing back. I think that there's a consensus that generally speaking, the Vikings want a lot of these in-house dudes back, but I'm curious if there's someone that you think would be a landmine, Julia, that you do not want to bring back to this team, or maybe you want them back, but you think they're too expensive to bring back. Anyone strike a chord there for you?
Too expensive. Okay. I'm looking at, you guys know I'm not great with numbers.
It's all good. I can rattle off a few options here. You got, all the cornerbacks, Gilmore.
Right.
At 30, Griffin.
I was going to say Shaq. I was going to say Shaq. I feel like he was hurt so often this year, and while he had like some moments, I don't think he made the impact that they expected him to make when he came in. And I'm looking at their, 4.5?
Yeah, 4.5 million last year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 4.5 last year. I think Shaq would be one of my number ones. I think, as much as people love Dalton Reisner as a person, I don't think he's necessary to have back either. Do I think he adds some personality? Sure, but I think locker rooms are constantly evolving year to year anyways. I think they like having him around. I don't think they'd be too sad to see him go because I don't think he's super impactful on the field. And I don't think they'll bring Cam Robinson back.
I would agree with that. I'm guessing Cam goes elsewhere, gets paid like a left tackle.
Right.
The Vikings do need a tackle to fill in for Christian Darrisaw, though, if he misses time. I think Darrisaw could miss a month or 2 months, something like Hawkinson last year. So that is going to be sneaky important in free agency. But Reggie, anyone either in-house or even let's go out of house, someone that you would not want to sign for the Vikings?
So I mean, it's kind of low hanging fruit there, but I wouldn't re-sign Cam Robinson. I just think you've seen enough to see that he's probably going to be seeking a bigger type of a deal, or maybe just a 1-year deal. I don't know what his going rate is going to be, but I think you saw enough that he was a stopgap option. He started off well, and then it kind of faded a little bit down the stretch. And so I think that's probably somebody that maybe you don't need to sign back. I think, you tried to sign Shaquille Griffin for depth, and he had his good moments, but I think you probably want to go out there and actually get like some bona fide guys in that defensive backfield. And it's for that reason that I probably go away from re-signing Stephon Gilmore as well, just because he's older, and he was solid last season, but I think you probably want to get younger and more athletic at that position to really compete. Just because you need some guys who can run around back there and kind of last. I think you saw in the Detroit game, in that Rams game, they were bend but don't break, and they did that pretty well. But then once the offense really wasn't doing what you wanted to see from them, I think that's kind of when the dam broke, and you just saw the Rams and the Lions just making plays all over the field. So I think you want to go younger there in the defensive backfield, and that's probably why you don't re-sign Shaq or Stephon.
Mm-hmm. Ron Johnson, free agents that you would avoid.
Yeah, only one I'm looking at is Cam Robinson, 17 million per year, 33 million guaranteed. There's names I don't really want to see anymore, but I know oftentimes it becomes a dollar amount thing when you look at Nick Mullins. Like, he has no guarantees and he's only looking for about 1.9, and you probably can talk him off the ledge of that to come back as a third quarterback or a backup quarterback. But I just think it's time to move on from Nick Mullins. I think there's a lot of guys out there that might give you better. To be more like JJ McCarthy. If JJ McCarthy is your future, you got to find a backup that's similar to, and it's not the money. I would rather have a more expensive Marcus Mariota behind JJ McCarthy than a Nick Mullins, because Nick Mullins, you have to change your offense based off what you're going to do with JJ McCarthy. Whereas with Marcus Mariota, you would not have to change much. Like, I think Marcus Mariota gives you just the same stuff as what JJ McCarthy's going to give you with his legs. Maybe his arm's not what it used to be when he's a Heisman candidate winner. But that's the only two I would look at. Cam Robinson for me. I mean, I agree with the Stephon Gilmore. Only again number. Like, if he's looking for $7 million again or $8 million, I just don't think that's the move to make at his age. He's probably a guy that wants to sit around some more and not go through training camp and come in late like he did. But at the corner position, I think there's a lot of younger guys out there that you can go with.
Yeah, I look at their free agents, and there are a few that I don't want back because it would represent settling. I think that you can upgrade some depth in free agency. So, for instance, I would be a little disappointed if they just ran it back with Jerry Tillery and Jonathan Bullard on that defensive line. They did fine last year, especially against the run. I think you can do better. I think you can find more pass rush. So I would not want them back if it meant that was your group next year. David Questenberry, nice fill-in last year. If he's got to play for 6 games in place of Christian Darrisaw, I would not want him back if you were settling for that. Same goes with your depth wide receiver spots. Brandon Powell, Trent Sherfield, fine. But I think you can upgrade there. Ron and I have talked about that, going out and getting a Demarcus Robinson type. Finding ways to improve on the margins. The Vikings didn't have tremendous injury pitfalls last year. They were a pretty healthy football team other than Christian Darrisaw. That may not be the case this year. They may need to use that depth more. They may need to go 5 deep at cornerback. They may need to go 6 deep on the defensive line. They got to have bodies back there that you trust. I think that you can upgrade your depth, and so don't necessarily fall into the trap of signing only your own guys back when you can go outside the team and find some improvements. Coming up next, a new controversial mock draft has the Vikings taking an interesting position in the first round. That's next on the Minnesota Football Party. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. The NBA is almost back from its All-Star break, and once they're back, about a third of the regular season remaining. The playoffs are always a blast. You can get in the action at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The live betting is so much fun. From the opening tip-off to the final buzzer, you can bet live on player props, fourth quarter comebacks. You can put together a live same-game parlay for even bigger payouts. It's a blast. You also have college basketball approaching March Madness. Plus, the NHL will be back soon from the Four Nations face-off. New FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. Daniel Jeremiah has a new mock draft. Yes, it's Reggie's favorite time of year. It's mock draft season. He's got the Vikings taking Trevion Henderson, running back out of Ohio State. I don't have the scouting report on Trevion Henderson. I know he's good. I haven't watched the All-22. I'm just struck by running back in first round. How does that hit your ear, Reggie? Running back in first round. Would fans love it? Would they hate it? How would you feel?
First off, I love Trevion Henderson. Been following him for a while because I keep in touch or keep an eye on the Buckeyes after my days of covering them for a few years. And so I think Trevion Henderson is a home run hitting running back, a guy who probably is like a younger version of what you get in Aaron Jones. And I think I see the vision with Daniel Jeremiah. But I just don't know that to me feels like a luxury pick. That feels like a team that won 14 games and you just need some extra, juice to help, get you a little bit more over the top. But that 14 wins just kind of, I don't know, it looks a little different in the light after the season. And so again, that just feels like a luxury pick. That feels like, obviously this is not apples to apples here, but remember when the Chiefs, they won the Super Bowl and then they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire and it was just like, oh wow, like they got another weapon. Obviously, that didn't work out at all for them. He ended up not being much of an impact player at all. But this is a different type of a guy, and I think what a lot of scouts like from Travion Henderson is that not only is he a home run threat in the backfield or catching it in space, making guys miss and being able to take it all the way, but he's also a pretty good pass blocker as well. And that's something, as Kevin O'Connell is pretty pass happy. That's something that you want to see from a running back in his system, because he likes these longer developing pass plays, and you want to see a guy that could help. And also, if you are going to go with the JJ McCarthy, having somebody like that, fierce rival in college, as JJ is a Michigan man and Travion went to Ohio State. You want to have a guy who could really kind of help take some of the pressure off, as you kind of saw from JJ in Michigan, with a good running back that could take it all the way on any given carry. But that's a tough sell, I think, when you got needs on the interior of the offensive line and the interior of the defensive line, and you need help, in the defensive backfield. Those are some of the needs. It just seems like a little bit of a luxury to pick up Travion Henderson in the draft, even though I love the guy.
Yeah, to kick it to Ron here. I mean, one counterpoint might be, hey, look what the Lions did. The Lions went and got Jahmyr Gibbs. They were panned for that move, and Gibbs has been unbelievable, game-changing, offense-changing for them. But you also, like Reggie said, you have so many other needs. How would it feel to you, Ron, to go running back?
I wouldn't mind it. So here's the thing about Travion Henderson. He's played Minnesota twice, so I've watched him closely. When you watch him play, here's the thing: screen game, really smart, savvy. He understands how to run behind blocks. He's patient behind the blocks. He does have top end speed. He's only 5'10" though. But again, 6-foot running backs aren't necessary anymore. Because when you look at guys like Eddie George and Jerome Bettis, that used to be the standard. And then you start seeing guys like Dalvin Cook and his brother Cook. The smaller running backs tend to fit in today's offense for football because you don't have a fullback anymore. You're not playing smash mouth football in every down. And Travion Henderson would fit in Kevin O'Connell's offense when you think about being able to run screens, being able to run jet sweeps. The kid can run jet sweeps. I don't know if you guys saw the fake tush push stuff they tried to do when they stole that from Minnesota, just saying. And when you think about what that looks like. So when Travion Henderson this season, though, a lot of football, no 100-yard games. That's the one thing that worries me. Has he been run down? Because he's been in college for 4 years, and that's a long time for a running back. A lot of running backs after 4 to 5 years, David Cobb, Mo Ibrahim. You can go down the list of other colleges, guys that, have been in the league, college for 4 years, and then they go to the NFL. It takes time for their body to recover from 4 years of college football. He had a lot of football. I wouldn't be opposed to it, though. It just depends on where. And I know everybody knows, like, is Kwesi going to do the thing he does, which is know he can get a guy at 32, fall back to 32, and still get a running back at 32, or jump out of the first round because Travion Henderson still might be there in the second round. It feels like a Dalvin Cook, James Cook type of running back move where I could see him fall into the second round, and the Vikings playing it smart and saying, look, we don't need this first round pick. If we do want a running back, let's drop back to the second round and get him early in the second round, like an Antoine Winfield, like a T. Higgins. And so I could see that working that way. But no, I'm not opposed to it. I like Travion Henderson just for the top end speed. When you watch, and he did it against the best of the best. He did it against Oregon. He did it against Michigan. When you watch it. The one thing I will say, though, shout out to the Minnesota Gophers his freshman year. They held him to 2 carries for 15 yards, but he was only a freshman. He didn't play much. But they did shut him down this freshman year. But no, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But again, I think a lot of people are saying there's so many other needs the Vikings need, and is that the way to go with the first round pick or running back?
Yeah, that good call out, Ron. No 100-yard games because he never got more than 12 carries all season.
Yeah, they were blowing people out, and they were throwing the ball a ton. And so when they were either behind or they were trying to, it was a weird offense this year.
And they had Judkins as well, who a lot of people really like too.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that young receiver. So, you got to feed the beast. And I think that was part of it, was they were trying to make a statement, and Michigan stopped them for a half a second, and then they still won the national championship. So didn't work.
Yeah, Julia, this is why I think you can maybe get away with going running back in the first round because it is such an impactful, sexy position. This is a player that's going to touch the ball a bunch. It's a player that's going to be super visible. They're probably going to be able to make an impact in week one. There's not as much of a development curve. So I can talk myself into a round one running back if you have already addressed other stuff in free agency, right? That's my justification. How does that hit you?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, kind of like what Reggie was saying, where if you have that luxury at the time, absolutely go for it. But I do think that there's bigger concerns that should be addressed first. I did find it interesting, though, because the Vikings are so wonderful on their website where they put they keep updating whose mock draft, where they have at 24, or should the Vikings move around, this, that, and the other. All of the mock drafts at 24, it's all D-backs. Everyone is predicting they'll go for a corner or safety. Only two people that I could find were projecting somebody on the offensive line, and it was only Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State and Tyler Booker out of Alabama, which, of course, Roll Tide would love that. Tyler Booker also played one season with J.J. McCarthy at IMG Academy, too. So they do have a little history there, which is a little fun fact. But I think that you guys are all absolutely right in saying, like, if they have already taken care of the issues in the trenches, sure, why not? Like, go for it. If you think that you've solved those problems. But I think when you draft linemen, it's a more surefire strategy of solving an issue than maybe necessarily drafting a running back, because it's like what Reggie said, where you just don't always know how that's going to work out for you. And I do think they still have other options at running back too. And I did see the comparisons, everyone saying that he's so much like Aaron Jones when he was younger, and they look so similar and how they play the game. But I do think I'm going to have to go with, I still think they need to address the trenches before they do anything else. So if they have not done that by the draft, I don't think they should be picking up a running back.
Yeah, it'll be tough to pull the trigger on a Henderson if you're staring like the top guard in the draft right in the face. If Tyler Booker's right there, or if Kenneth Grant is right there on the defensive line, that's a tough decision to make. And obviously we got a few months to see how it plays out and how free agency plays out first. In closing today, I've got this for you. ESPN polled 13 different analysts, and one of their questions was, which team will take the biggest step back in 2025? The two most common answers: the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. Vikings lose their quarterback, maybe. Lions lose their coordinators. But a lot of people thought the Vikings and Lions would take a step back. Which team, we'll start with Ron Johnson, which of those two, Vikings and Lions, do you think is due for a bigger regression next season?
Lions. Coaching. Like, people don't put a lot of emphasis on coaching, and I know, you think it's like plug and play, but I mean, look at some of these teams that like have bad culture or just bad like play calling or make huge mistakes. I mean, nothing against Matt Nagy, but you watched him with the Bears, and then you watch him with the Chiefs. And then I just watched a video of the Chiefs could have been, I think it was like 9-6 or something like that, or I think it was 9-6 or 9-7, whatever that math is, 9-8. But if you watch the games they won, there was like 7 games that literally were like pass interference, it didn't matter, all this other crap, like, one toenail too long for the Ravens. Like, that should have been the touchdown. The game, they lost that. So when you look at all that, like, not to say Matt Nagy made mistakes, but Matt Nagy made mistakes. Like, I know Andy Reid has a lot of control, but there are certain things Matt Nagy did when you go back and watch some of the film, and you watch the Super Bowl specifically. Matt Nagy looked lost. Like, and the fact that the Chiefs thought they were about to be the Patriots, like, so they can get their documentary together, like, hey, Patriots did it, man, we could do it. No, you don't have Bill Belichick. You don't have that staff. Matt Nagy is lost right now with whatever Sirianni's doing over there. And Andy Reid's like, look, hey, I'm just the head coach. You're the offensive coordinator. Get this together. And so I will say, when you look at the two teams, the Lions have lost so much from a coaching standpoint. I don't know if Dan Campbell knows offense or defense that way. Like, I think he's a great leader of men. I think he's a guy that can get everybody pointing in the right direction. I just don't know if that offense can be replicated without Ben Johnson.
Julie, your thoughts? Julia, you're muted.
She had the arms folded back. She was getting comfortable with her take. Like,
she was cooking.
I think that it's I think that it's the Lions that are in a tougher spot. The Vikings, it's because they're going into another season of a lot of unknown, right? But I think at this point, I trust the coaching staff that the Vikings have. I mean, Kevin O'Connell just won Coach of the Year. You know, like, there's a reason that he won Coach of the Year. But when you lose both your offensive and defensive coordinator, I think that's such a huge blow to not just like it's a blow to like the culture of your entire organization, right? So I think that the Lions have a lot more unknown at this point than the Vikings do, just because we don't know who's going to be quarterback for the Vikings, right? That's our big number one question. But with the Lions, it's like, what is this team and organization even going to look like next season? So I think I'm going to have to go with the Lions on this one. And I think also, sure, there's all these quarterback questions, but it's what we've been saying for so long about the Vikings. Like, Kevin O'Connell's still going to be there to help whoever's in the pocket, right? Play his best. And if he does it for a third time with the third quarterback where they're playing lights out, whether it's Daniel Jones or JJ McCarthy or whoever ends up quarterback for the Vikings, then we'll know, KOC really is the real deal when it comes to whispering to quarterbacks. But I think that when you lose both your offensive and defensive coordinator, there's a lot more hanging in the balance for a team than what the Vikings have going on, if you were to compare the two.
I am going to lean Vikings on this for the following reason. I think Detroit was unbelievably unhealthy and unlucky with injuries. And I think that they are due to be healthier. If they have Aiden Hutchinson for a full season, that alone could swing a game or two because of how impactful he is. The Vikings were incredibly healthy. I think that could turn the other way. I also look at the way the Lions won games. I'm going to give you some of their margins of victory last season. 13 against Seattle, 36 at Dallas, 38 against Tennessee, 10 at Lambeau, 46 against Jacksonville, 17 against Chicago, 22 against Minnesota. Like, okay, they smoked teams. They had 8 wins by double digits last year. So if you regress from that, you're probably still winning a lot of games. You're probably still winning games just by 2 or 3 like the Chiefs did last year. The Vikings still had to rely on some smoke and mirrors late in games, some hijinks. And I think that they're more sustainable than they were in 22 when they had insane comebacks, playing from behind, pulling victory from the jaws of defeat. I think last year was better from a Vikings standpoint, but a lot of things also went right. I think that Detroit was so dominant for such a large chunk of that season with injuries. I think that they, with the same quarterback, a lot of the same personnel, they really aren't losing anyone significant. They have more continuity than the Vikings do amongst the players, not the coaches, but the players. I think Detroit is more poised actually to stay on top of the NFC North. Reggie, what do you think?
Well, after that argument, hard to come behind that. But I think Sam, you're wrong. I think you're wrong. No, here's why though. And it goes back to what Ron was saying. It's coaching for me. When you think about what Kevin O'Connell has done, and yeah, it crashed and burned in 23, but he has some things going. When Kirk Cousins went down, it looked like they were kind of on the way up. And then also, the first couple games of Josh Dobbs, and it just has some very unfortunate things happen with the quarterback position. But I think you look at the guy, and I think Dan Campbell has done enough to where you can give him the benefit of the doubt. But here's the thing: they've lost so many coaches. It's not just the offensive and defensive coordinators. It's some of these position coaches that, Ben Johnson took with him, Aaron Glenn took with him, and they had to replace all these guys. And it's kind of hard to replicate some of that success when you don't have the continuity, yeah, the personnel is the same, but a lot of it too was Ben Johnson knowing the personnel well and calling up plays and dialing it up at the right times. And I think the tough part is trying to make that same magic happen again. And I also think that it was tough with all the injuries last year, but also just trying to replicate that. I think the window is kind of closing on the Lions. Like, I think they had a really good opportunity in the playoffs last year, even with the injuries. They lose and really kind of get whooped a little bit by Washington. And now, you lose all these key pieces that kind of made you the team that you've been. And I think that's just kind of hard to overcome. Yeah, Dan Campbell's a rah-rah motivational guy, and I think he'll get the team ready to play every week. But as far as the execution goes, I'm just not sure yet. And the Lions kind of presented themselves with like this cachet of a team that had kind of, been there, done that. The Lions kind of acted like they were the Chiefs, and it was just like, you really haven't won anything yet. In fact, like, you're just learning what winning looks like at a consistent level. And so I think if I trust anyone, nothing, with everything that has changed and will change with the Vikings, the one constant is Kevin O'Connell is still there. And so I think, he's shown us enough to believe that no matter who's under center, he'll make them competent enough to win football games. And they'll have a team that, they found ways that, the takeaway streak every game last year, very fortunate every week. But then, the years past, the year before is just turning it over like at a high clip just about every game, but they were still in a lot of these games as well. So I think he'll field a competitive team. It's just a matter of if he can get the quarterback position where it should be. But I don't think that they win 14 games again, but I can still see them going at least 10 with Kevin O'Connell. With the Lions, there's just so much up in the air. I know the personnel is the same. Will Goff look the same, with the new offensive coordinator? Because he and Ben Johnson just seem to have that synergy together, and it all starts at the quarterback position. So I'm just wondering if they'll capture that magic. So I go Lions in that regard.
I will say, to support Reggie's argument, I know I'm on the opposite side, but the Vikings are a great example of when you have something good going at offensive play caller and then you lose that, the wheels can fall off, because this has happened with the Vikings a lot over the last decade. When they handed the keys from Norv Turner to Pat Shurmur mid-season, the wheels fell off. Then Shurmur figured it out, had a great 17 season. Then they handed the keys over in 18 to John DeFilippo. Wheels fell off. Stefanski took over. He was great. He left for Cleveland. Wheels fell off. Every time they lost a good coordinator, things went terribly for the Vikings. Maybe that happens in Detroit. We can only hope. Let's end with our favorite game. What is the temperature difference between Ron's Mexican vacation and the Twin Cities? Currently, it is -5, Ron. What is the temperature where you reside?
This is cruel.
It's only 9:40, so it's a little chilly. It's I think it's, what does it say? My watch says 81. So a little
86
chilly.
86 degree difference.
My friends in Dallas, they will send me, because on Snapchat you can pop your temperature up. And they're like, it's so cold and it's 23, and I'll send back and then it's -8, and they're like, just kidding. We're totally just kidding.
Yeah.
It's a good day today. It's only gonna be like 85 is the high, so it's gonna be a good
balmy 85.
Poor Ron.
Good day to just relax, take a nap by the beach, hear the waves. I'll be down there. There it is. I'll be down there later.
That looks real nice. If you're not on YouTube, check it out.
I gotta always go to my hot yoga class to warm up.
Probably can see my kids down there.
The electricity bill in my house from the various space heaters, electric blankets, and other heating devices, it's off the charts. The gas bill from the fireplace, it's insane this winter. We're paying out of pocket, that's for sure. That's the Minnesota Football Party today. Reggie Wilson, Julia Daniels of KARE 11. Check them out on KARE 11 Sports Plus as well. Their extra digital content. Ron Johnson on the Ron Johnson Show just had Gophers wide receiver Elijah Spencer on the program, a draft hopeful. It's really good. Go back and watch that as well. And I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks for watching and listening. Check our audio out on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed, and we will talk to you next time.